guys. I was just reading 1 Samuel randomly, and it's funny. Sometimes I just flip my Bible open and there's just something really profound just sitting there in front of me. That happens a lot. So I think there is like a mystical, magical sort of power that God puts in the Word where it can just speak to you. And, if you keep opening to the same chapter every day for a while, just randomly, there's probably something there for you. So, yeah. This is just about Saul and God's timing. So Saul had an army encamped around the Philistines, and they were like way outnumbered, and they started getting scared, and they started deserting. People started leaving the army, and I think there was 600 men left with him, and he just he waited the full 7 days that the prophet Samuel told him to wait. But towards the end of those 7 days, even his last men had started, deserting and leaving the army because they were scared. And that's where a lot of us are at the moment, where we're seeing how bad things are and how outnumbered we are, and how sort of futile everything is. But then Saul takes matters into his own hands, and it's justifiable because no one had made a sacrifice to God yet. He was waiting on Samuel to come to make a sacrifice to God so that they could go into the battle with God on their side. And Saul's thinking was, Samuel's not coming. I need to do this because we need God's favour in this battle, and we haven't got it yet. So he takes matters into his own hands and does the sacrifice. And the second he finishes, Samuel rocks up, and he's like, "What are you doing?" Because he wasn't supposed to be doing that. He was supposed to be waiting on Samuel. And that's confusing, because that seems like a trap that any of us could fall into. I could easily fall into that trap, thinking like, "Oh, I better do the right thing according to me, because I need to step in here and sort of help God out a bit, put the work in because he's not doing it." And I've done this 1,000 times where I think I need to be pushy to help God's will be done, rather than kind of letting him steer and just going with the flow a bit more. And that's not what Saul did. Saul took matters into his own hands. He did the sacrifice. Saul rocks up and says, "Well, that's it. You're no longer going to be king. God wants a man after his own heart." And in steps David, the Chad. And that's the end of Saul's reign. So Saul, seemingly doing something right because he was getting anxious because the time was getting late, ended up ruining his entire kinghood, which is pretty scary, guys. We need to really make sure that we wait on God rather than taking matters into our own hands and let God steer. I'm not saying that we can just kick back and do nothing. We always need to be working hard for his kingdom, but in his timing, and letting him lead rather than us thinking that we have to lead because God's running late. To me, waiting on God's timing, it always seems like God's running late until that point hits and he does what he needs to do, what he needs to do for you. And then you're like, "Oh, I get it. I get why you made me wait." Sometimes it's the second that I let go of it, and I'm like, well, here I am. God didn't do what I thought I needed him to do, so maybe he didn't need to do it, and I can just let go of it. And then that'll be, I'll get the phone call going, "Oh, actually this has happened," and it all comes to pass. So yeah, just encourage you guys to wait on God's timing rather than feeling like you have to move things along because he's forgotten to do something. God's like inside of time, and he's all through time, and he knows everything, and he knows exactly when to do stuff and exactly when to not do stuff, and he can see the future, and he can see why he would or wouldn't do something. And this at the end of the day, this place is just a test. This place is just like a video game, and if we pass the final level, heaven. And that's the whole point of all of this, all the suffering, all the stuff that we go through here is heaven. That's the whole point of it. Or hell for other people. So try to keep an eternal perspective on things rather than freaking out in the moment because God's not coming through with the goods right at that second when you think you need them the most. Just trust him, and in the long run you'll look back and go, it all makes sense. God bless.